Greetings, podcast listeners. Welcome. This is season 6, The Moment of Truth, and this is episode 68, Waking Up from Mind Control, part 2. This is a pretty vulnerable episode for me. Again, here I share several of my awakening moments from this year, 2020. I guarantee you that some people will not like it, but others of you will, and that's just perfectly okay. Bonus points if you're watching on YouTube. This is the first time I ever video recorded my episode, so you can actually see my very professional recording studio. Stay tuned and enjoy the episode.
You are listening to Let's Get Metaphysical. This podcast explores the spiritual and metaphysical world through the experiences and opinions of the host and those interviewed. It should not necessarily be seen as direct endorsement or personal advice to our listeners. We encourage you to use your own discernment, judgment, and intuition regarding anything you learn from this show.
Let's get meta.
Welcome to Let's Get Metaphysical. I'm your host, Renata Maniaci, and I'm here to remind you that you are a spiritual being having a temporary human experience here on lovely planet Earth. Enjoy it. This is Waking Up from Mind Control, Part 2. In Part 1, I shared one of my primer experiences that helped me to realize I was being mind controlled. I call it a primer experience because it didn't wake me up fully, but it primed me for what was to come. This is part 2, and I share some keystone moments I had that led to my most massive awakening experience of this incarnation thus far. Biggest lesson? Things aren't always as they seem. Please note, these are some of my personal awakening experiences. I have no ulterior motive to share these with you other than a hope that you, me, and every being on the planet can see, know, and accept universal truth when we are faced with it. This is my truth, and my desire in sharing it is that it might contribute in some small way to you finding your highest truth. So be it. Masters and angels, I request you help us to please always feel the truth, know the truth, tell the truth, and be the truth. And let truth be a guide for me and those listening. Thank you with gratitude and full faith. Bless creation. And with that, let's jump right into the episode. Are you ready? Let's get meta. As I said, I am going to share some of my own cascade of earthly awakening experiences that happened in 2020. But I want to explain what I mean by earthly awakening. For a while now, I really feel like I understand in the spiritual realms what is happening to planet Earth. Meaning, if I'm looking at Earth's progression from a spiritual level, I get it. I understand what's happening. Maybe for about 10 years now on a conscious level and forever on an unconscious level. To me, it's obvious. Earth is raising in vibration, literally transitioning from one dimension into another dimension. And it's for the better. Everyone's vibration on the planet is going up, yada, yada, yada. I get it. I don't know why I understand that piece, but call it a knowing, a remembering of my chosen blueprint. Kind of like divine instruction set for this particular lifetime. Like, okay, move to DC, check. Quit your 9 to 5, check. Enroll in massage school, check. Go to Machu Picchu, check. Remember you're here on Earth to help with the transition from 3D to 5D. Check. You know, information from a higher vantage point. That's not to say that I in any way feel higher than anyone else. I don't. At times, I'm just as lost as anyone. But what all of that was going to look like in conventional reality, what the spiritual was going to actually look like in the manifest human reality, how that transition would translate into everyday human life, I had no freaking clue how that would look. Over the past 5 years or so, I've found myself saying things like, all the old systems are going to need to be destroyed, or all the crap needs to come to the surface. It's the only way. I was absolute in my recognition and understanding that Earth was going to need a clean slate. And I had no clue how it was going to come about in our everyday reality. So I'm going to go into what I'll call my earthly awakening cascade, to recall the tale of how I steadily began to wake up from mind control into the realities of this planet, and how it gave me clues into how the Earth transition is happening from a conventional human perspective. By Earth transition, I mean moving Earth from a slower vibration to a higher vibration, from more negativity into more positivity, from having more fear into having more love, from more lies into more truths, from more facades into more authenticity. To paint a picture of where I was coming from pre-2020, let's just say that for the past 20 years, I would have been considered a liberal, using conventional American political terms, the L word. If you knew me, you'd see a queer, gender-fluid, left-leaning, pro-choice, diversity-loving, NPR-listening, open-minded liberal. And no matter how this story ends, I would still be considered most of those things. I lived in DC for 8 years, arguably the most blue city ever. It's easy to live there as a liberal. Everyone around you thinks, feels, and votes the same way that you do. So imagine my shock, and my city's shock, when in November 2016, the unthinkable occurred, and Orange Man Bad was elected President of the United States. I cried for 3 days. My tender, queer soul was actually terrified about what was going to happen. Why? Well, that would have to be because of the M word, the media. I didn't know much about Orange Man before 2016, but the M word seemed to. They told me just why and how Orange Man was bad, and why wouldn't I trust them? After all, they seem to have the same values as me, so they must know the truth about how stupid and ignorant and arrogant and dangerous this man is. I marched for marriage equality in DC. I was on the steps of the Supreme Court the day that the ruling went down. I cried tears of joy when I met RBG for the first time, and you're telling me that this man is going to reverse all of the progress that we've made? There was only one thing that somewhat grounded me in those terrifying days. About an hour before the election was called for Orange Man Bad, and I was truly on the verge of hyperventilating. I calmed myself down enough to pull a card out of my favorite oracle deck. By that time in my life, my spirituality and my relationship with the divine had taken over as my top priority, and I had a great relationship with my guidance in all forms, including card pulling, so I trusted it. I ended up pulling my favorite card in the deck, Divine Order, which essentially means everything that is happening now is perfect and sanctioned by the Creator. It didn't stop me from crying the next 3 days, but somewhere in my soul, I had faith that for some reason, Orange Man POTUS, President of the United States, needed to happen. Fast forward to 2018 and my uncomfortable and inappropriate experience with the infamous John of God. If you haven't listened to the previous episode, Waking Up from Mind Control Part 1, go listen to that first before continuing so that you understand this experience fully. To summarize, I got to experience firsthand how something that looks so good and holy and healing and godly was just a facade, covering something very dark indeed. And don't get me wrong, healing did happen there. I experienced it, but it was not pure. And a word to the cautious, the dark can heal too. Choose wisely. Let's fast forward again to 2020. But I'll pause here to share a very important aspect of this whole awakening cascade. And that is the work and tools of master healer John Douglas. Yes, you've heard me mention him before, and yes, this is the person I dedicated a whole season to, season 4, starting with episode 37, with over 50 people sharing their healing miracles that they attribute to him and the master angels, that John Douglas. Why do I keep mentioning him? Simply because through his divine work and processes, I have been able to shed my false beliefs and discern truth more and more with each passing day. How does that work? Simply put, his processes, which you can think of as audio meditations, remove falsehoods and negativity and replace them with the structures necessary to see universal truth, particularly a process called subconscious repair. Aligning to and discovering the truth of matter is literally John Douglas's whole raison d'être and why he is here on the planet, though he might describe it a different way. And don't take my word for it. If you're interested, go buy Subconscious Repair and listen to it once a week for 6 months. You will be changed. But what does this mean for me and my earthly awakening cascade? I'm glad you asked. Well, I first met him and started listening to his processes in May of 2016. So by the winter of 2018, when I found out the allegations against John of God, I had been listening to subconscious repair and other processes like soul repair, health repair for 2.5 years. And I was ready and able to accept the truth of what I had experienced with him. Despite having started this very podcast with episodes about him and his center, I could see, know, feel, and accept the truth about him, even though it wasn't pretty. So now we're in spring of 2022, fully in the COVID pandemic. I'd been listening to these processes consistently for 4 years, bringing my human self and my soul closer and closer to each other, letting go of old programming, false beliefs, bringing universal truth closer and closer every day. Not to mention, by the end of spring 2020, I had done 2 full John Douglas tours, which means attending every workshop of 2 different 8-week tours, each workshop being chock full of highly advanced spiritual development processes that I personally feel takes you light years ahead of other conventional spiritual practices at warp speed. You know how intense the training is for elite athletes? This is like that training, only for spiritual aspirants. Well, something about the amount of time and work made it so that enough untruth, old programs, brainwashing, conditioning, subliminal messaging, desensitizing, and you guessed it, mind control, were cleared out of my mind to really start seeing more earthly or 3D truth. And when I was shown it, I felt it deep. I saw it. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. And things finally started to click. The pieces started to come together and make sense. My previous thoughts that there was something wrong with the world, it all started to make sense. Why the world is the way it is, or why it appears to be what it is. And then I was like Queer Alice falling down that proverbial rabbit hole. I try to be very careful not to tell people what to believe or how to be. I sometimes receive flack around this, saying that I'm too vague, not specific enough, and I don't go into details. There are reasons for this. Mostly, it's your job to find out truth for yourself not mine, not the media's, not your friends, not your family's. It's your job. Also, people who put themselves out there and speak have a responsibility to be as pure, honest, and impeccable with their words as possible, because the karma of those words and the reactions to those words goes back to them. People spewing lies or ignorance, with or without knowing it, are still responsible for that karma and for the karma of the people those lies reach. For example, my first 2 episodes were about John of God, who is now accused of sexual abuse and assault by hundreds of women. I must take responsibility for the karma, for the action of putting those episodes out there. What if my episodes swayed some woman to go down there and she got assaulted by him? That affects my karma as well as hers. I pay a karmic price for that. This is what I actually feel to be true. And if I fully feel this to be true, it follows that I need to be as impeccable with my words as I can, to not incur negative karma for myself or for you. Just know that the way I talk about my experiences is intentional. The entirety of 2020 has been a cascade of steadily exiting false beliefs, conditioning, subliminal messaging, and various types of mind control and brainwashing. Have you ever been looking at something, focusing on it? You know what it is, you're watching it, and then you zoom out just a little bit, and all of a sudden the whole scene changes in front of your eyes. When I was around 4, I had this experience. It was simple. I was looking at a single caterpillar on a tree stump, just following it with my eyes. Then all of a sudden, my eyes took in more than just that single caterpillar, and I saw that the entire stump was literally covered in caterpillars. It was one of those, whoa, moments. And this is one way to describe the experiences I've been having this year in 2020. Expanding my perception just slightly and seeing a whole new truth to the entire scene. This happened with politics, parties, and taking sides in general. I spent so much time steeped on one team, so to speak, one party, that I wasn't able to see a greater truth. That perception shifted from, wow, this team is so great, it's clearly the best team to be on, why would anyone ever want to be on the other team? To, whoa, these teams are playing the same game. The jerseys are different colors, but they're still both wearing jerseys. They both play the game by the same rules. The teams are both owned by really wealthy people. Both teams have their diehard fans and their fair weather fans. The diehards on both teams will be with their team no matter what, through thick and thin, win or lose, in sickness and in health, whether they like what they see or not. The fair weather fans may choose to abandon the team if the going gets tough, or if they don't enjoy what they see. The players on both teams can be traded, offered deals, bought by another team. Some players on both teams are the stars. Everyone knows their name. They're known for what they do. Some players aren't as well known, but are contributing nonetheless. And other players get more playtime than others. Some get injured, some get retired. But both teams are playing the same game. And the game has the same rules. You can flip a coin and it has 2 sides, but both sides are still part of the same coin. You can have 2 cogs in a machine, and they may look different and be far away from each other, but they're both part of the same machine. A bird has 2 wings, a left wing and a right wing. Both wings are necessary to make the bird fly, but it's the same bird. A Nintendo might have 2 different buttons. A makes you jump, B makes you run. But they're both part of the same controller. They're both part of the same controller. This might seem so simple, but it was so profound to me. It was enough to make me take a giant step back and decide, I don't want to play that game anymore. That game isn't making my life better. I don't want to be one of the cogs on the machine. The machine is broken. I don't want to keep helping this bird to fly. The bird is sick. I don't want to be a button on the controller. I don't want to be controlled. It also brought into my awareness why Orange Man Bad is so hated, vilified, disliked by practically everyone, especially in the media. He doesn't play by the rules. He appears to be wearing a jersey, but wait, is he even part of a team? Oh my gosh, I don't even think he's playing the same game. It's like he's not even playing the same sport. I can see why both teams are so upset. If you like the game or love the game, you trust the game, maybe you make money from the game. You live by the game, you die by the game. It must be very disconcerting to all involved to see a rogue player run onto the field and not follow any of the rules, like a wolf in ill-fitting sheep's clothing, wreaking havoc on the sheep. This new awareness fit in very well with where I am in my spirituality. I truly believe Earth is moving out of a more dualistic reality into a reality free from duality. So I've tried to embody non-duality as part of my spiritual practice. It doesn't really matter how you are led to awakening experiences. The most important thing is waking up, freeing your mind. It could be a YouTube video, a prophetic dream, a plant medicine ceremony, a censored documentary, a guru, a comic strip, a message from your soul received in meditation, a gradual lifting of the veil in everyday conventional life, or a shocking, sudden ripping off the wool from over your eyes. It could be all or none of these things, or any combination. Have you ever had the experience where you have a favorite song or movie and you've heard or seen it a million times, and then one day you become aware of a whole new and deeper meaning to it? I had this experience a few years ago. I was driving from Phoenix to San Diego listening to the Rent soundtrack, and one of my favorite songs came on, and I must have heard this song, sung this song hundreds of times. But for some unknown reason, it was like I heard it for the first time that day. Like I was just hearing the true words and realizing what they meant. And I started sobbing and I couldn't stop for a long time. And if you're curious, the song is Another Day. It reached a whole new, deeper level of my soul that day. And how I hear it has changed ever since. I had another experience like this in 2020. In this case, it was the same message being delivered by two completely opposite sources over the course of several years. And in 2020, it finally sunk in. One source is someone I love listening to, full of wisdom, spirituality, love, patience, knowing. A person I trust. The other source is someone I had done everything I could to avoid listening to. A person who, to me, seemed crass, ignorant, brash, and abrasive. The essence of the words from one source were, "You're being misled almost everywhere. Much of conventional society is made up on lies." The essence of the words from the other source were, "The news is fake." Bonus points to those who can guess the identity of these sources. And yet, the awakening moment is neutral. The awakening moment doesn't care where or how or who the truth seeped in from. Slowly, over years of hearing the same thing, the same song, the same message over and over and over. The awakening moment is crystal clear, and for me, that truth was, you're being misled almost everywhere. Much of conventional society is made up on lies, and the news is fake. And ding, the light bulb went off. I realized that much, if not most, of the media I had ever consumed, especially on screens, was propaganda and had been designed by people who had an agenda. People who wanted me to believe in certain things, behave in certain ways, trust in certain ideas and not in others. I'm not talking about individual relationships with individual human beings. I'm talking mostly about media you consume on screens and stereos and were created for a specific purpose by a very small group of people. Like Prince said, it's cool to use the computer, but don't let the computer use you. And hey, if creators were transparent about their intentions, their reasons for creating and making their content, and they shared that with you, that's a different story. But that's not what's happening. It didn't matter who I heard these messages from. When you're ready to handle the truth, that's when you hear it. And you might be saying, duh, Ren, we know that already. But do you? Do you have any idea how deep this goes? How connected it all is? How programmed we have been since we were in diapers watching Disney? And there's more. There's so much more. More awakening moments this year than I can go into. Moments that made me laugh, moments that made me cry, moments that activated my gag reflex. You remember that moment in The Matrix when Neo wakes up in the incubator thing and he frees himself from all the cords embedded in his body? This year for me has been eerily similar to that. You remember when he gets onto Morpheus's ship and starts realizing the truth of what he's seen and throws up? I've had that moment. Maybe you've had that moment. And when we're ready, may we all have those awakening moments. Now, some of you are going to leave this episode and not come back. You may think I'm a crazy conspiracy theorist who doesn't show proof, doesn't give examples, and can't back up what I say. And honestly, a year ago, I would have been right there with you. And there are others of you who are going to resonate with every single word that I've spoken. Either way, or somewhere in between, I love you all. I wish the very best to every single one of you. I hope you find your truest truth, your clearest clarity. I hope that you meet your highest high self with as much ease and grace as possible. I'm going to tune in now and see if there's any guidance coming in from my angelic team. We are at a transition point in our history, in the Earth's history, in the galaxy's history. This is a turning point. It's a very exciting moment. It's not meant to be fearful, though we understand that that is how it will come across to many on the planet. Know this, what is happening is for the better. This planet is evolving, it is raising in vibration, it is changing in frequency, and so are you. And you will feel the effects of these changes, but know that you are loved. Your souls are safe and protected. Just keep breathing and moving forward, and be as open as you can to the truth. less creation. I'm going to end the episode with something spiritual teacher John Douglas said. The truth always enlightens you. The truth always liberates you. The truth always collapses anything negative. And this is what I am observing in my life this year. More liberation, more enlightenment, and the collapsing of negativity at every turn. In the next episode, I'm going to talk about some tips and tools that I've used in my journey that brought me closer to finding, seeing, and discerning truth. Again, if you are interested in exiting the matrix, you might enjoy my live course by that name that I co-lead with my Up, Up, and Awaken co-creator, Julia Malone. This is a 3-week remote course that takes a deep dive into subconscious clearing, becoming aware of and deprogramming negative conditioning, old programs, removing subliminal messaging to bring universal truth closer into us. This work is deep and it will change you. If you are hearing this when it airs, we are running this course at the beginning of January 2021. Check out realizeyourawakening.com for more info. I'm going to leave it there for today. Thank you for listening. Blessings to you on your journey. Stay positive, stay safe, and stay meta.
The Let's Get Metaphysical podcast is an Up, Up, and Awaken production. Our intention is to raise the vibration of the planet by sharing, validating, and normalizing spiritual and metaphysical experiences. The show is produced and hosted by Renata Maniaci, co-creator of Up, Up, and Awaken Productions, a platform devoted to creating conscious content to assist in the awakening currently taking place on this planet. If you want to see more from Up, Up, and Awaken, please subscribe to the Up, Up, and Awaken Productions channel on YouTube. If you're looking for more support in your awakening process, please consider becoming a member of our Up, Up, and Awaken community on Patreon. Patrons in this community both give support to the conscious content that we create, like this podcast, and receive support in their awakening via the community's offerings, including courses, live group healings, and an interactive community. You can join the Up, Up, and Awaken community by visiting patreon.com/Up, Up, and Awaken. Subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss an episode. Give us a 5-star rating or write us a review on your podcast app. To learn more, visit our website at letsgetmeta.com. The Let's Get Meta podcast is almost entirely listener supported. If you love the show and want to support it, you can still become a patron of the podcast at patreon.com/Up, Up, and Awaken. We appreciate all types of support. It helps keep this show going. Thank you for listening. Stay meta.
Let's get meta.
Metaphysical.
Let's get meta.
Metaphysical.
Let's get meta.
Metaphysical.
Let's get meta.
Metaphysical.